High Commissioner Drayan Velour stood above them, his shimmering scales catching the crystalline light of the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council. From the towering podium carved of solid arenite, he looked down on the human delegation, as if they were nothing more than children playing at politics. His expression was unreadable to the untrained eye, but among Valorian elites, the subtle shimmer dancing across his neck frills betrayed it. He was amused. The chamber itself was a masterpiece of Valorian architecture, vast and glowing with soft internal energy, the walls embedded with organic crystal veins that responded to vocal tones. Each word spoken echoed with a harmonic timbre, creating a solemn, almost sacred atmosphere. For the Valorian, this place was not just a meeting hall. It was a temple of legacy, a place where decisions had shaped the direction of thousands of worlds for over 50 millennia. And here, standing awkwardly in ill-fitting environmental suits, were the humans. The air was not kind to them. While Valorian physiology thrived in a high ozone, low nitrogen mix laced with noble gases, the humans needed their clunky suits just to breathe. Every exhalation let out a soft hiss. The occasional squeak of servos accompanied their movements, and the faint hum of filtration units never stopped. Their presence in the chamber was an audible intrusion, a living reminder of their fragility. "Let the record reflect," Velour's voice rang out, his speech perfectly modulated by the chamber's acoustics, "that the Terran species petitions for elevation to full council status. And so, I ask what makes you believe you are worthy of such honor?" The question hovered in the air, perfectly enunciated, dipped in contempt. He didn't address any particular member of the human team. His gaze swept over them as a group, unindividuated, as if they were a single organism. Beneath his words was an unspoken truth. The Valorian didn't ask questions unless they'd already decided the answers. The gathered Valorian dignitaries, the ambassadors of Hydrak, the tri-faced oracles of Kryn, the genetic seers from the spiral libraries of Voltara let out synchronized bursts of amusement. Their bioluminescent markings pulsed with coordinated patterns of ridicule, a cultural signal among their kind as clear as laughter. Some flared their neck frills, a gesture reserved for mocking those perceived as overstepping their place. Ambassador Roland Martinez of Earth cleared his throat and stepped forward. Inside his suit, the internal temperature regulation system adjusted for the added stress. He could feel the servos tightening slightly around his joints, responding to the tension. "With respect, High Commissioner," Martinez began, speaking into the translator embedded at his collar, "humanity has achieved faster than light travel less than 3 centuries after discovering electricity. Our pace of advancement proves nothing," Velour cut in, waving a hand with aristocratic boredom. Light cascaded through the folds of his ceremonial robe as though alive. Nothing except desperation. A species scrambling to catch up, hurling itself through time like a frightened animal chasing a shadow. Martinez swallowed the retort that rose to his tongue. "You perfected quantum mechanics while our ancestors threw spears." Lisa Chen, the lead diplomat in the delegation, responded. Her voice was calm, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the podium. "We know your history, and ours. And we've contributed meaningfully to the Galactic Collective in the last 50 years, especially in biotech and AI." Velour's secondary eyes narrowed while the primaries maintained their ever-placid stare. "Yes, your crude attempts at altering DNA," he said, voice dripping with false interest. "How many of your subjects survived those early experiments? Do you even remember?" There was a rustle among the Valorian elite guard. They stood rigid, ceremonial weapons glowing faintly with active plasma cores. It was an intimidation tactic and not a subtle one. The message was clear: you are here by permission, not by right. "The Council's position remains unchanged," Velour continued, taking a step back from the edge of the podium, voice now formal. "Earth may continue as a protectorate species under Valorian oversight. Perhaps in a few thousand years, we will revisit your petition. Until then, do try not to damage the floors with your environmental boots." A final ripple of synchronized light passed through the Valorian audience, a mocking farewell. As the humans were escorted from the chamber, Martinez didn't look back. He didn't need to. The chill in the air wasn't from temperature. It was from the cold dismissal. They'd been measured and found lacking. Not because of anything they'd done, but because of what they weren't Valorian. Outside the chamber, silence fell. The delegation filed into their transport without a word. The hiss of pressurizing doors sealing them back inside their fragile, life-preserving shells. Inside his own helmet, Roland could hear his heartbeat, loud and fast. He tapped the encrypted channel. "Lisa," he said. She responded immediately. "I'm here." That was worse than expected. "Yeah," she replied. They weren't just denying us. They wanted to humiliate us, and they had succeeded. Hours later, back at the human embassy's compound on Valor Prime, Roland stood at the reinforced viewing panel that overlooked the Valorian capital. The city was a glowing sea of bioluminescent towers, its spires rising in impossible formations, some suspended midair by harmonic field generators. Every part of it was an architectural declaration. "We are not like you, we are better." He watched as a Valorian transport glided silently over a canal of liquilum, the liquid light flowing beneath it casting soft patterns on the ship's underbelly. Even their water was prettier. Lisa joined him, carrying 2 mugs of nutrient coffee substitute. It wasn't real coffee, but it did the job. She handed him one without a word and leaned beside him. "They never planned to listen," she said. "This wasn't a hearing, it was a performance. A reaffirmation of their narrative. They don't fear us," Roland said quietly. "But they mock us so hard. You'd think they feel threatened." Lisa gave a bitter laugh. "Or maybe they just need to believe they're above us." Roland turned toward her. "Why?" she shrugged. "Because if we're advancing this fast, it means the Dominion isn't as stable as they think. It means 50,000 years of stagnation disguised as refinement. And maybe, deep down, they know it." That struck something inside him. He set his mug down. "They fear the mirror," he said. "And we're the reflection." Elsewhere, beyond the diplomatic halls, the Valorian citizens, most of whom would never meet a human, consumed the same broadcast that had just unfolded in the Grand Chamber. Their news feed summarized it with glowing approval. "The Council reaffirms the protectorate status of Terra. Cultural and technological purity maintained." Comments flooded in on Valorian info streams. "They still wear suits just to walk our streets." Pathetic. Their biology is inefficient. It's a miracle they even survived their own planet. Let them stay pets under the Dominion. Safer that way. But not all voices agreed. On sublayer channels, hidden in digital crevices monitored by the Cultural Preservation Committee, a few Valorian scholars whispered doubts. "Their AI advances are remarkable. Far beyond ours in intuitive processing. Have you seen their symbolic patterning? It resembles our oldest temple art. What if? They're not as foreign as we were told." High above the city, within a spire cloaked in electromagnetic camouflage, High Commissioner Valor met with his advisor, Nexus Raven. "They're becoming curious," Valor said as he sipped a vial of neural infusion. "Far too curious." Raven nodded slowly. "You think they'll find something?" "Of course not," Valor chuckled, "but I want surveillance increased on all human archaeological endeavors. If they dig into our past, I want to know before they do." "You expect them to uncover what?" "The myths," Raven asked, tilting his head. "I expect them to chase shadows," Valor replied, his smile hollow. "But even shadows can cause unrest when they resemble something too closely." He turned toward the window. "Watch them scramble, let them chase, let them hope," he said. "Hope is a delicious cruelty when you know it leads nowhere." And yet, deep in his second brainstem, beneath the arrogance, behind the cultural pride, something lingered, a whisper of unease. It had stirred when he'd heard the word Sanskrit, an ancient memory, a forbidden text. A pattern once dismissed. But no, it couldn't be. He turned away from the window. "Schedule another review with Cultural Preservation," he ordered. "We need to double-check the seals on the Forbidden Archives." "Yes, High Commissioner." And so, beneath the illusion of superiority, the seeds of revelation stirred. Dust clung to every surface, coating the ancient stones with a gritty layer that dulled even the strongest beam of a helmet light. In the underground depths of the so-called Temple of Ancient Wisdom on Proxima Centauri B, Dr. Maya Blackwood wiped a gloved hand across her visor, squinting into the shadows. The air inside the chamber was still and heavy, thick with the weight of silence and time. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her handheld scanner. The machine's display flickered, trying to make sense of the wall in front of her. Intricate glyphs and lines flowed across the surface like frozen waves, etched with astonishing precision. Unlike the sharp, angular Valorian script found in most official inscriptions, these markings were different, softer, more organic, like a river meandering through stone. She leaned in, bringing the scanner closer. The lines seemed almost familiar. From her comms unit, Nathan Rodriguez's voice crackled in through the static. "Maya? You still seeing that weird curvature pattern?" Yeah, she murmured. It doesn't match modern Valorian at all. The grammar clusters are completely off. This might be something pre-Dominion, maybe even pre-Ascension era. There was a pause, then Nathan came back on, running it through the comparative linguistic matrix now. Give me 30 seconds. Maya continued her examination, eyes following a spiral formation that branched into repeating sequences. She could feel something stirring at the edge of her memory, an echo of graduate linguistics seminars back on Earth. Sanskrit, or something older. It couldn't be. This was supposed to be a Valorian cultural heritage site. The official records labeled it a meditation archive built 22,000 years ago during the Second Dominion period. No mention of deviation. No mention of linguistic anomalies. A loud scoff echoed behind her, bouncing off the crystalline walls. Another dead-end human? Sentinel Kras sneered. Maya didn't turn around. She knew his voice by now. The Valorian guard captain had been assigned to her team as part babysitter, part surveillance. He never let them forget that they were guests on this planet, barely tolerated, constantly monitored. Maybe you should stick to studying your own primitive cave paintings, he added, leaning lazily against a glowing support column. Maya pretended not to hear him. The glyphs on the wall were too mesmerizing. Each curve hinted at intention. Each symbol resonated with mathematical elegance. Ignore him, Nathan whispered through her earpiece. Okay, listen to this. This can't be right. Maya, I just reported a 67% pattern match. She froze. With what? There was silence for a beat. Then his voice came back, softer this time, almost reverent. Sanskrit. In Latin, Maya blinked. You're joking. I wish I was. The script on the wall shares base character alignment with classical Sanskrit and Proto-Italic derivatives, Latin too. The quantum harmonics in the lettering are echoing Earth linguistic frequencies. Maya backed away from the wall slightly, her heart pounding in her chest. The light from her helmet scanned across the entire surface now. The glyphs weren't just writing, they were alive. Not literally, of course, but they carried the same repeating ratios and geometrical flourishes seen in Earth's oldest languages. Sacred geometry, spiritual constructs, phonetic nesting patterns, she was seeing all of it. She touched her fingers to the nearest symbol. Cold, smooth, timeless. Behind her, Kras was watching. What are you whispering about? He demanded, pushing off the wall and stalking forward. Another theory about how your little monkey brains can decipher Valorian elegance. Maya didn't answer. She was too busy taking new scans, rapidly archiving files to all three of her backup servers. The system chirped softly as it encrypted and uploaded packets of data to the orbital lab where Nathan was waiting. Rodriguez, she whispered. Tell me we're not hallucinating this. No, ma'am. You're seeing it. I'm seeing it. I is seeing it. This stuff predates Valorian civilization by at least 20,000 years. The wall. It's 70,000 years old, minimum. That's before the Valorian Dominion even existed, Maya breathed. Before they even charted their home system. She took one step closer to the glyphs, tracing a circular pattern that echoed the layout of the Vedic mandalas. The mathematical harmony was overwhelming. It wasn't just writing, it was a code, a message. Whatever this is, Nathan said, someone didn't want us to find it. Suddenly, the chamber felt colder. A heavy shadow fell across the glyphs. Kras loomed over her now, his scales shifting from gold to crimson, a sign of agitation, possibly aggression. This area is now restricted, he said, voice firm. Pack up your equipment. Maya didn't move. Our research permit is valid for 2 more weeks. Kras raised his weapon. The glowing lines along its shaft began to hum. By order of the Cultural Preservation Committee, he said darkly, you will comply, or I will preserve this site myself. She raised her hand slowly, still recording. Her body language screamed compliance, but her mind was working overtime. With a few covert taps on her scanner, she triggered a final encrypted transmission, a data burst sent directly to Nathan's secure cloud vault. As her team was forced to leave, escorted by armed Valorian guards, Maya kept her eyes locked on the walls. The glyphs had disappeared into shadow once more, but she could still see them in her mind's eye. We're not imagining this. Back aboard the shuttle, Maya sat in the corner of the cargo bay, her helmet off, sweat lining her brow. Her fingers were white around the hard drive she'd hidden beneath her seat padding. Nathan, she said, pulling up the comm line. Secure channel. Go ahead, he replied. Get me a line to Ambassador Chen. And start deep linguistic analysis on those scans. Focus on the mathematical relationships. Compare every known Valorian and Earth origin language. Nathan's fingers were already flying across virtual interfaces. What are we looking for exactly? Proof, Maya said, that the Valorian have been lying. Not just about us, but about themselves. There was silence for a long moment. They'll try to shut us down, Nathan said. I know. They'll discredit you. Let them try, she said, her lips curling into a grim smile. We've got something they can't explain. Within hours, their findings triggered a storm. Back on Velar Prime, Professor Thex Nuru, an expert in Valorian antiquities, reviewed the human data in stunned silence. The cultural patterns, the glyph alignment, the harmonic structure, it was all there, too perfect to be a coincidence. Behind him, 2 members of the Cultural Preservation Committee stood like statues, their scales unreadable. But tension radiated from them like heat. Well, asked Director Vex Torin, head of the committee, are these claims valid? Nuru hesitated, but then activated a side-by-side projection. The ancient Valorian script, once believed to be unique, appeared alongside Sanskrit and Latin. Mathematical overlays flickered across the display, revealing identical harmonic waves and recursive geometry. The linguistic patterns are undeniable, he said softly. There's a common origin. Torin's voice dropped to a growl. That's impossible, is it? Nuru turned, his scales shifting to cautious green. Then explain the genetic markers. Explain the symbols. Explain the fact that humans, after only 3 centuries of interstellar presence, discovered a language that predates the Dominion by tens of thousands of years. Torin's hand twitched toward his ceremonial blade. The Council will never allow this to spread. But then another voice rang out. I already have. Karen Valor stepped into the chamber, her presence arresting. As daughter of the High Commissioner, her word held weight and her status outranked nearly everyone in the room. I approve Dr. Blackwood's research request, she said. And Professor Nuru has already submitted confirmation analysis to every major university across the Dominion. The entangled network ensures it's out there beyond suppression. Torin's eyes flared. You've doomed us all. Do you understand what this will do to our society? No, Karen replied. I've just reminded it of the truth. Across Velar Prime, a whisper began to rise among the young. Subtle changes in art, in clothing, in the way glyphs were stylized on walls and windows. Everywhere, people began to question. And deep in the orbiting human research station, Maya and Nathan watched as the data began to flow. New symbols, new glyphs, new connections. What do you think it means? Nathan asked her one night. Maya stared out at the stars, the memory of the temple still etched into her soul. I think we found the missing link, she said, between them and us. She held up the ancient drive, still warm in her hand. And I think they're terrified of what comes next. The quiet in the Grand Archives was absolute, so complete that even the hum of nearby fusion cores felt distant, almost muffled, like a storm brewing behind triple reinforced glass. Inside the restricted wing of the archives, deep beneath the crystalline towers of Velar Prime, Professor Thex Nuru sat hunched over a flickering console. His scales shimmered an anxious pattern of green and gray, a sign of unease among his kind. He wasn't alone. Standing behind him like sentinels were 2 members of the Cultural Preservation Committee, Director Vex Torin and Archivist Selma Cree. Both wore ceremonial armor polished to a mirror sheen. Neither spoke. The only sound was Thex's fingers dancing nervously over the quantum interface, pulling up data packet after data packet, the encrypted files sent from Dr. Maya Blackwood's team. He'd already run them through cross-referencing matrices 3 times, hoping for a glitch, a misreading, some anomaly to disprove the impossible. But the results hadn't changed. With each analysis, the symbols found in that temple on Proxima Centauri B, ancient inscriptions etched into walls long before the founding of the Valorian Dominion, aligned with sacred geometries found in Sanskrit, early Latin, and Proto-Indo-European script. The statistical overlap was beyond coincidence. There was a pattern, a purpose, a message. Well, Director Torin's voice snapped through the silence. Sharp as a blade. Say something. Vex swallowed. His throat scales tightened reflexively. There's merit to the human findings, he said quietly. Far more than I expected. The inscription they found, it's not merely similar to our oldest text. It's almost identical. Torin's face darkened, his bioluminescence flaring a deep, ominous purple. That's not possible, he snapped. The Valorian language was developed in isolation during our ascension. Our purity is the foundation of the Dominion. Then the foundation is cracked, Vex said, slowly standing. His claws tapped gently on the console as he pulled up the next set of images. A three-dimensional projection filled the air. On one side, the ancient Valorian script, spiraling curves, harmonic nodes, and structural glyphs with recursive symmetry. On the other side, classical Sanskrit characters, arched, flowing, rhythmic. Overlaid, the two writing systems matched line for line, curve for curve. The AI matrix pulsed with quantum harmonics, showing identical mathematical frequencies in both. The humans didn't stumble onto this by luck, Vex continued. Their AI picked up on it because the language resonates literally. It shares harmonic structure with their own ancestral scripts. The frequencies match within 0.3. No natural divergence could produce this much overlap. Archivist Cree crossed her arms, silent, though her scales flickered with what looked like alarm. This is treason, Torrin spat. To even suggest such a thing. You're telling me that humans, primitive, fragile creatures, share a linguistic ancestor with us? Vex looked him squarely in the eye. I'm saying that we may be the descendants of a shared species. Or at the very least, descendants of civilizations that once coexisted, maybe even collaborated. You will bury this, Torrin hissed. Every file, every image, every reference. Before anyone could answer, another voice echoed from the rear of the archive chamber. No, Director, he won't. Karen Velour stepped into the room, the air seeming to shift around her as if her presence rebalanced gravity. Her scales shimmered with the iridescence unique to her family bloodline, pearlescent, commanding, unmistakable. Torrin stiffened. This area is restricted under your father's authority. And I outrank my father in matters of scientific oversight, she replied smoothly, stepping up beside Professor Nuru. She scanned the holographic display. Her eyes took in the overlapping scripts, the harmonic waveforms, the DNA resonance markers. She didn't flinch. This is what I suspected, she said softly, since I began my own analysis of the temple ruins on Valoris Sai. Vex's eyes widened. You knew? I had fragments, pattern overlays, architectural motifs. But this, she looked back at Torrin. This is confirmation. It will tear our society apart, Torrin said, voice shaking with anger. 50,000 years of history undone by a few Terran archaeologists. No, Karen said, stepping forward, her voice rising with certainty. It won't undo anything. It will reveal the truth we've denied, that we were never alone, that our language, our art, even our genetic code, are echoes of something ancient. Something shared. Echoes, Nuru whispered. That's exactly what they feel like. Torrin's hand moved to his ceremonial blade. I won't let this destroy the Dominion. Karen faced him squarely. You're too late. Dr. Blackwood's findings were already broadcast by my approval to the Dominion's top universities. The quantum entangled relay ensured instant distribution. Even now, scholars are reading what you tried to suppress for generations. Torrin lunged forward, slamming his fist on the console, scattering the interface into fragments of light. Then you've committed cultural heresy. Karen didn't flinch. No, Director. I've committed truth. Elsewhere, the information spread like wildfire. On Valor Prime, in the neon-lit learning centers of the lower districts, young Valorian students pored over the leaked findings with breathless fascination. Murals long dismissed as decorative suddenly became sacred. The once dismissed glyphs in subway tunnels, forgotten architectural accents, ancient family scrolls all took on new meaning. They weren't remnants of Valorian isolationism. They were artifacts of connection. In human colonies, the response was mixed with awe and fury. News anchors replayed clips of Velar laughing at humans during their hearing. Talk shows brought linguists and historians into heated debate. How long have they known? Was this deliberate suppression? What does this mean for the Galactic Council? At the orbital research station above Valor Prime, Maya stood with Nathan in front of a massive display showing every known site where Valorian and human glyphs had now been found to align. Red dots marked Earth, ancient temples in India, ruins in Anatolia, carvings deep in the Andes. Blue dots marked Valorian planets. Together, they formed constellations, lines of communication carved across the stars. This isn't just parallel development, Maya said. It's a map. Nathan nodded. And someone wanted it hidden. Back in the capital, an emergency session of the Cultural Preservation Committee was called. But they were met with protests outside their tower. Valorian youth painted the ancient symbols across their scales, forming brilliant, living tapestries of ancestral art. Some chanted in broken, phonetically learned Sanskrit. Others sang Valorian harmonic tones in human melodic structure. A sign floated above the crowd, not the end of the Dominion, the beginning of our memory. Karen stood at the balcony of her family estate that night, watching the lights of her city shift. It was subtle, but noticeable. The old rhythm, so predictable, so calculated, was changing. She turned to Maya, who stood beside her now, helmet removed, her face lit by the soft glimmer of bioluminescent art blooming across nearby buildings. "We found the fracture," Karen said quietly, "and inside it, we found the link." Maya looked down at the encrypted drive she always kept on her. "How long do you think they've known?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Since the first excavation of the Vault of Origin. That was classified within hours of its discovery. I've seen the redacted logs." "They knew," Maya said. "They feared," Karen replied. Inside the Grand Chamber, High Commissioner Valor watched a silent feed from the lower city. He said nothing, his hands resting on the edge of his crystal podium. The truth had slipped through his fingers. He didn't speak as Nexus Raven entered the room holding a data crystal. "We've confirmed it," Raven said. "Professor Nuru's analysis was flawless. There are harmonic resonance matches in our ancient songs, our oldest art, even in our neural sequencing." Valor said nothing. "Your daughter isn't the only one who knew," Raven added. "Several scholars, quiet ones, have been suspecting this for decades. She just gave them the key." After a long pause, Valor finally spoke. "Then we are not what we believed. No, High Commissioner. We are more." The sky above Velar Prime shimmered in faint iridescence, an unnatural glow cast by the planet's massive orbital arrays, the crystals humming with quiet, anxious energy. It was a night unlike any in recent memory, too still, too expectant. Beneath those glowing spires, 2 generations of Valorian leadership stood at odds, not with weapons drawn, but with truths unsheathed. High Commissioner Drayan Valur hadn't left his chambers in nearly 2 days. The central control tower, once a hive of activity, stood silent as a tomb. Its usual procession of aides, diplomats, and advisors had vanished. Within, only Drayan and his personal guards remained, their armored forms motionless at the corners of the chamber, watching their leader sink further into brooding silence. He stood at the great window wall, staring out at the capital city far below, where, once he had seen only order, now he saw cracks. Gloss strips of light painted the streets, but they flickered in strange rhythms. Too chaotic, too human. His daughter had started all of this, Karen Valur, his blood, his heir, his undoing. He clenched his jaw, the subtle shift in his scales betraying the fury he kept hidden from the guards. She'd gone behind his back, validated the human's findings, and broadcast forbidden data to the most influential academic institutions across the Dominion. And now, the great silence he had preserved for 50,000 years was unraveling. A soft tone sounded at the edge of the chamber. "Let her in," Drayan said, not turning from the window. The doors opened with a hiss. Karen walked in alone, unguarded, head held high. Her ceremonial robes were unfastened, her scales adorned with the now controversial pattern of ancient unity curves and fractal designs inspired by the glyphs found in the Proxima Temple. Drayan remained still, hands clasped behind his back. "You've disgraced your line," he said coldly. "I've honored it," Karen replied. "You just forgot what it stood for." Drayan turned slowly, his eyes locked on hers, steady and unreadable. "We were meant to lead, to guide, to shield this galaxy from chaos." "No," Karen said. "You were meant to learn and teach, not control history, not fabricate it." His scales flashed crimson, a sign of dangerous emotion among Valorian elders. "The humans are a threat to our culture. They dilute our precision with their messiness. Their languages are sloppy, their customs erratic, their biology inefficient. And yet," she said, stepping forward, "they uncovered what you refused to see. They deciphered our origins while you buried them." He gestured sharply toward the window, toward the city below. "Do you see what they've done? Look at them, our youth chanting in alien languages, painting themselves with hybrid patterns." Professors quoting Terran philosophy. "This is corruption, not progress." Karen walked beside him and looked down at the same scene. In the open plazas, groups of Valorian and human scholars worked side by side beneath glowing lecture domes. Children, Valorian and human alike, practiced musical resonance patterns together. Harmony, not discord. This is what evolution looks like, she said. Adaptation, growth. Unity. Unity through surrender, he snapped. No. Through truth. Silence stretched between them for a long, brittle moment. Then Drain lowered his voice. You don't understand what you've set in motion. The Cultural Preservation Committee has called an emergency tribunal. They're calling for my resignation and yours. Karen folded her arms. Let them. They'll have to answer to the people. And the people have seen the truth. You think a few glowing symbols and overlapping waveforms will change what we've built? No, she said softly. But ideas will. And those symbols are not just decoration, they're memory, legacy. And our people are remembering. Drain's expression tightened. They need structure, he said. Without it, we collapse. We ascended because we were disciplined. Because we chose to rise above the chaos. We didn't rise, Karen said. We ran. We buried the past and called it progress. Her voice softened. Father, I've studied our oldest scrolls. There are references hidden between translated lines of a time before the Dominion. A time of shared knowledge, coexistence, even partnerships with non-Valorian beings. You knew, all of you did. He didn't deny it. She stepped closer. What were you so afraid of? Drayan didn't answer right away. His gaze wandered back to the night sky. When I was younger, he said, we excavated a site on Kalfarai 2. A ruin unlike any other. The walls sang when we touched them, ancient resonances responding to our presence. But the language was unreadable. It didn't match any known Valorian dialect. He paused. That's when we knew. Knew what? That we weren't alone in our origins. That we weren't the beginning, but the continuation. Karen breathed quietly, her suspicions confirmed. So why hide it? Drayan's voice dropped. Because if we weren't unique, we weren't superior. And if we weren't superior, the entire foundation of our culture, our governance, our identity, our purpose, would collapse. Karen nodded slowly. That fear cost us the truth, and almost cost us ourselves. The door tone chimed again. Professor Nuru entered, accompanied by Maya Blackwood. Behind them, a pair of young Valorian aides carried holographic projectors. Apologies for the intrusion, High Commissioner, Nuru said, but we have new data. Drayan gestured wearily. What now? Maya stepped forward, activating the central projector. A 3D map filled the air, dozens of archaeological sites, human and Valorian, scattered across multiple star systems. Each point pulsed with synchronized quantum resonance. The patterns were unmistakable. This isn't just a language, Maya said. It's a network. A galactic archive seeded by a shared ancestor civilization. And we believe they intended it to be rediscovered together. Karen added, and we've only unlocked the first layer. There's more. Drayan stared at the map, his expression unreadable. I've also brought a message, Maya said, producing a secondary projection. It displayed a passage of merged script Sanskrit and ancient Valorian intertwined, forming a poetic structure. Together we seeded the stars so that in time, divided, we might grow. But unity is the key to what we left behind. When truth is spoken by two tongues, then the gift shall awaken. Nuru spoke softly. It's a prophecy. One that requires both species to understand it. Drayan's eyes narrowed. What gift? Maya hesitated. We think. Telepathic connection. Genetic resonance. We're still decoding it, but initial neural tests show dormant pathways lighting up when both linguistic patterns are spoken together. It's a biological reaction tied to shared ancestry. The room was silent, then Drayan spoke. You've given the people something I spent my life trying to bury. Karen stepped beside him. You tried to protect what you built, I get that. But now we have to protect what we are. He turned to her, for the first time not as the High Commissioner, but as her father. Can you lead them? He asked. When the old guard strikes back? When the factions call for blood? I don't want blood, Karen said. I want awakening. And if I have to fight for that, so be it. Drayan looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and slowly removed the ceremonial crest from his robe, an emblem passed through Velor generations. He placed it in her hand. Then don't fail them. The next day, the cultural tribunal convened. Torin and his traditionalists stormed into the chamber with weapons and rhetoric, demanding arrests and calling for purges. But they were met, not with resistance, but with resonance. Young Valorian flooded the upper balconies chanting in ancient harmonic patterns. Human diplomats stood beside them, repeating Sanskrit phrases in perfect synchronization. The walls of the chamber pulsed with quantum light. Truth had arrived, and it sang louder than fear. As Torin raised his blade toward Maya Blackwood in one final act of defiance, the elite guard stepped between them, not to protect tradition, but to protect the future. Their scales shimmered not with old battle codes, but with a unity pattern. Karen Vaylor took the podium, her voice ringing clear. "We were never meant to rule alone," she said. "We were meant to remember, to restore, and to walk forward together." The chamber erupted in light. The old guard fell silent, and the Dominion became something new. The amphitheater known as the Combined Sciences Council Chamber had never felt more alive. It wasn't just the thousands of Valorian scientists, philosophers, and diplomats gathered under the vaulted crystalline dome, nor the human envoys in their upgraded environmental suits gleaming under the crystal array. No, it was the chamber itself that felt like it had come awake, as if the structure had been waiting dormant for this exact moment. Dr. Maya Blackwood stood at the center of the platform, breathing slowly, evenly, though her heart raced beneath her suit. Beside her was Ambassador Lisa Chen, calm and unshaken as always. Flanking them on the Valorian side stood Karen Velour, daughter of the High Commissioner, her scales adorned with the ancient unity pattern twisting geometric shapes that shimmered with delicate iridescence, echoing the old glyphs rediscovered in the temples and ruins scattered across both their civilizations. High Commissioner Dran Velour sat elevated in his observation seat, presiding silently. His expression was stone. His scales shimmered with unreadable shades of neutral gray, a rare choice for a Valorian leader. "Present your evidence, human," he said at last, his voice calm but heavy with caution. "Let us see this great revelation that has brought such disorder to our society." Maya stepped forward and activated her holographic interface. The lights in the chamber dimmed, and in the air above her, a set of ancient glyphs appeared slowly rotating in space. Valorian and Sanskrit characters floated beside one another, glowing with faint blue and gold light. "These inscriptions were discovered in a temple on Proxima Centauri B," Maya said, her voice firm but not aggressive. "Your guards tried to end our research, but we completed a full scan and analysis." "Graffiti from a dead age," Velour said dismissively. "Decorations left by a primitive people." "No," Maya replied. "Watch this." She inhaled and spoke a carefully pronounced phrase in Sanskrit. The syllables hung in the air, vibrant, clear. The glyphs in the hologram pulsed in response. A ripple passed through the chamber. Several Valorian scientists leaned forward, their scales flickering in confusion and intrigue. Maya repeated the phrase, this time adjusting the tone to match the harmonic frequency identified by their quantum linguistic AI. Glyphs didn't just glow. They began to shift, change, unfold. The structure of the language reacted to the sound. From the upper tiers, a voice cried out, "That's impossible." Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "Dr. Blackwood, please show the genetic analysis." Maya nodded, then gestured to the next slide. A series of holographic DNA sequences appeared in midair. Side-by-side comparisons of human and Valorian genetic data played out, key sections pulsing in synchrony. "We used resonance mapping," Maya explained. "We compared the quantum patterns found in both Sanskrit and ancient Valorian scripts with biological markers embedded in each species' genetic code." She turned to the audience. "The results are undeniable. Both species carry dormant sequences, non-coding DNA that activates in the presence of harmonic linguistic frequency. Frequencies only found in the ancestral languages we now know are shared." From her seat below, Karen Velour rose. "Our earliest myths," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, spoke of a time before the Dominion. The time when knowledge was shared across stars. We always dismissed those as metaphor. But the proof is here in our language, our DNA, even our architecture. It's not just the humans who found their history in our ruins. We found ours in theirs." A long silence followed. Then the High Commissioner's voice cut through. "This is a human trick, some technological deception." Maya projected one final slide. It was a galaxy-wide map of Valorian archaeological sites. Every settlement, every temple, every preserved ruin. Each location flickered with matching symbols, some dismissed for centuries as decorative flourishes. But when viewed through the comparative framework of ancient Earth language structures, their true form emerged. "They left us a message," Maya said. "Not just words carved into walls, but a system of knowledge embedded into the very resonance of your cities. A memory encoded in vibration." The chamber erupted. Voices dozens, then hundreds filled the air. Arguments, exclamations, questions, debates. And then something extraordinary happened. A young Valorian from the upper rows, barely more than a student, stood and began to chant. Not in modern Valorian, not in their standard dialect, but in the ancient tongue, the same patterns Maya had activated with Sanskrit. His scales shimmered gold. The walls of the chamber pulsed with faint color. Then another stood, and another. Some began to speak in Sanskrit, others in harmonic Valorian. The air itself seemed to respond. The crystalline walls vibrated, light danced from every surface. A hum barely perceptible built in the background. Quantum resonance. It wasn't just symbolic, it was real. The chamber was synchronizing. Karen stepped forward beside Maya. "This is what they meant by the gift. The glyphs, the DNA markers, their keys. Biological and cultural encryption, waiting for the right combination of language and trust to unlock." "You mean," a Valorian scholar said, wide-eyed. "This wasn't just a historical connection. It's an activation." Professor Nuru stood in the aisle, nodding. "We believe the original ancestor civilization that seeded both our worlds encoded a form of cognitive potential latent abilities within both species. But it required something we've never had until now: unity." He pointed to the pattern now lighting up on the council walls. "Telepathy, pattern sharing, intuitive cross-species empathy. It's not science fiction, it's neurolinguistic quantum memory." And it was locked away until both languages resonated in harmony. Maya took a step forward. "And we're just at the beginning." Back on the surface, the change was even more dramatic. By dusk, Valorian cities were buzzing with new energy. Buildings long considered inert suddenly began responding to voice patterns. Doors opened without physical activation. Lights adjusted to ancient chants. Public message boards displayed glyphs no one had programmed. Words spread across the Dominion. In the capital's lower districts, crowds gathered around ancient monuments. Human children, their suits now modified with bioluminescent strips, sang in Sanskrit alongside Valorian students, triggering waves of color in nearby buildings. Public artists began recreating murals using both linguistic traditions, their paint mixed with reactive compounds that shimmered under harmonic sound. In the medical centers, researchers ran the numbers again and again, cross-species DNA sequences responding to sonic frequencies with real-time cellular responses. Dormant disease markers suppressed. Neurological clarity increased. Sleep cycles regulated across species lines. "We've already developed 3 new treatments for shared genetic disorders," Professor Nuru told a joint press conference. "Treatments that neither humans nor Valorians could have created alone." Inside the newly designated Unity Research Wing, Maya stood beside Karen, both watching a set of quantum resonance tests in progress. 2 test subjects, 1 human, 1 Valorian, sat facing each other in isolation chambers. Through filtered speakers, they began reciting a script half Sanskrit, half ancient Valorian. Monitors lit up. Shared neural patterns. The Great Hall of Harmony stood where once the Tower of Isolation had cast its shadow. Now, instead of being a monument to the past, it pulsed with the living breath of unity, its crystalline walls reflecting the colors of 100 different species. But today, only 2 mattered most. At the center of the hall, High Commissioner Drayan Valor stood under the ceremonial arc. Once adorned in robes of dominance, his garments now shimmered with humility, his scales displaying the ancient unity pattern for the first time in public. He had resisted this moment for so long. Now, he stepped forward into it. 3 months ago, Valor said, his voice projecting across the domed chamber, "I would have rather died than admit what I must say today." A hush fell over the gathered delegates, Valorian, human, and representatives from other galactic council species. Cameras hovered silently, broadcasting the moment across every star system connected to the entangled network. Valor took a breath. "My pride, our pride nearly cost us everything our ancestors built. But it was not my wisdom that spared us. It was the courage of those I once silenced." He turned. Maya Blackwood stepped forward beside him, followed by Karen Valor and Ambassador Lisa Chen. Behind them stood Professor Nuru, holding the final archive crystal etched with the ancient dual script. Maya faced the crowd. The humans did not come to conquer, Valor said, his voice softer now. They came to remind us of who we were, of what we shared, of what we lost in our pride. Karen stepped beside Maya and raised her voice. Today, we sign the Unity Accords not as strangers, not as conqueror and protectorate, but as cousins. As the two surviving branches of a forgotten tree. The holograms above flickered to life, displaying the final data sets, the overlapping neural pathways, the shared quantum frequencies, the synchronized resonance patterns. Images of children Valorian and human chanting in hybrid languages. Healing centers now curing conditions once considered incurable. Cities lit with fusion designs inspired by both species' art. The evidence was overwhelming. We once seeded the stars together, Maya said. And now, we bloom together. A hush spread as Professor Nuru stepped forward and inserted the final archive crystal into the hall's central console. A pulse of light radiated outward. Every quantum reactive surface across Valor Prime and on connected human colonies flickered with the message decoded from the original symbols. Together, we seeded hope among the stars. Time parted us to grow apart, but in reunion, we rise. Our strength is not in blood, but in memory. Not in conquest, but in return. Together, we become eternal. Gasps and murmurs filled the hall, as every Valorian felt something shift within. The resonance patterns activated. Neural pathways once believed to be evolutionary leftovers lit up. Telepathic linkage. Not full mind reading. Not control, but understanding. Suddenly, Maya felt Karen's awe, not in words, but in sensation. Karen felt Maya's grief for the lost years, the denied connections, the burned bridges. Every person in that chamber became a mirror of the other. And for the first time in living memory, silence did not mean disconnection. It meant unity. Valar sank to one knee. "I am no longer your High Commissioner," he said, his voice trembling. "I am merely your. Let history remember me not as the last of the old, but as the first of the awakened." Applause didn't erupt. It wasn't that kind of moment. Instead, people reached out across species, hands to claws, gloves to scales, forming connections not of power but of purpose. The Unity Accords were signed in a quiet hum of resonance, and so, a new era began. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. Valorian cities, long rigid and structured, embraced creative chaos. Art once confined to geometric logic now swirled with organic movement. Human sculptures lit with bioluminescent Valorian crystal patterns became landmarks in every major city. Buildings sang in response to dual language chants. Schools offered joint linguistic courses from the age of 3. But more than that, minds changed. The old guard faded, not by exile, but by irrelevance. Their vision of isolation, of cultural purity, had no place in a world rediscovering its roots. The Cultural Preservation Committee formally disbanded. Karen Valor was unanimously elected the new director of the Intercultural Legacy Initiative. Maya Blackwood was granted full diplomatic citizenship, an honor never before given to a non-Valorian. And Earth, once mocked, was now a central hub of quantum cultural research. In a quiet courtyard in the capital, beneath a blooming tree genetically spliced from Earth's oak and Valorian Drakari root, Maya sat with Karen on a stone bench. Children ran past them, laughing, some glowing faintly with inherited resonance patterns from mixed parentage. "I never thought we'd see this," Maya said, eyes soft. Karen smiled. "Neither did I. I thought we'd keep hiding until the end." Maya looked up at the aurora overhead, a lingering wave from the hall's core resonance event. It danced across the sky like a memory made visible. "I've been thinking," Maya said, "about how long this took. Thousands of years. So many chances missed. So many truths buried because they were inconvenient." Karen nodded. "We lost more than time. We lost each other." There was a pause. "But we found each other again," Maya said. "Not by force, not by dominance, but through memory, language, connection." Karen looked toward the children. "What will they remember of this? How will they tell it?" "They'll say it was the day the truth woke up," Maya said. The day pride made way for purpose. Final reflections, what began as a sci-fi fantasy, a tale of glowing glyphs, genetic resonance, and ancient scripts, reveal something deeply human at its core. It's not really about aliens or ancient technology. It's about truth, and what happens when it's buried for too long. In our world, history is often rewritten to serve power. Cultures are divided by the illusion of superiority. Truth is manipulated to maintain control. But as this story shows, truth always finds a way to rise, especially when spoken in more than one voice. This fictional awakening reminds us that real progress doesn't come from denying the past or rewriting it. It comes from confronting it, from finding connection where we once assumed difference, from seeing that the other is often just a lost part of ourselves. In a world torn by nationalism, racial division, and misinformation, maybe the message of this story is more timely than ever. Unity doesn't erase identity, it completes it. And when we dare to embrace the parts of history that challenge our comfort, we don't lose who we are. We discover who we've always been, activated. And for a moment, they saw through each other's memories, just for a flicker. But enough. It works, the technician said, stunned. Not just harmonics. This is transcognitive access. This is something our ancestors knew we'd need someday. Maya nodded, her voice quiet. They made us wait, made us grow apart. So we could grow strong enough to find each other again. Not everyone was ready. Some corners of the Dominion resisted. Elder clans declared the findings heresy. Some accused Karen of betraying her people. A few minor skirmishes broke out in more conservative provinces. But they didn't last, because the people had seen, had felt. The world was changing, reawakening, not through war, but through memory. And memory, once touched, could not be unremembered. In the Grand Archives, a final message was decrypted from the glyphs. Not a warning, not a prophecy, a statement, a truth. We divided ourselves that we might grow. We reunite now, not as strangers, but as the echo of what once was whole, and the world listened. Ah,